and welcome to another episode of My Football Story from the Honest Football Podcast. I'm Charlie Betts, and joining me this week is an England manager. Yes, an England manager. We've gone international. It's Stuart Langworthy, who is the England over 60s walking football manager. So Stuart has got an incredible relationship with the sport of walking football. It's one of the fastest growing sports in this country. We are currently European champions. I've learned that, and I've learned lots more about the sport of walking football and the physical and the mental benefits of it. It's a sport that I will definitely hope to try and engage with. If you do want to do that, then there's lots of pointers in this interview of how to get involved. I just want to thank Stuart for giving up his time. He's incredibly busy at the minute with his We Are Undefeatable campaign, which we also talk about how to get people of disabled backgrounds to play walking football. So if you want to support them, there are lots of ways of engaging with them. It is a self-funded sport. I've learnt loads. I've got a lot of admiration for Stuart and his organisation and what they do. And yeah, if you like what you hear, then don't forget to follow us on Twitter at HonestFootball3, where we've got plenty of content coming out and a few more interviews on the way as well. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy an interview with our first ever international manager, Stuart Langworthy. I'm delighted to say that Stuart's joined me today. So Stuart, thank you so much. I appreciate he's obviously quite busy at the moment. So thank you for giving up your time to talk to us this evening.
Yeah, no problem at all. Looking forward to it.
So Stuart, before we talk about you and obviously, especially with your role as the England manager of the over 60s walking football team, what we like to do with any guest that we have is actually go back to the beginning of your football journey. So what I really wanted to ask you first of all is your first memory of football, be it watching a game, playing, go back for us and just sort of give us a snapshot of what it was like for you when your first memory of football, really.
Yeah, it's a very long time ago, but I do remember playing for my junior school team. I remember my parents bought me a pair of George Best boots. Now they were very special at the time. They had the laces at the side. They bought me a pair of those, but they were burgundy and they were second-hand, but there you go. And I also remember a lot of the lads had Norman Hunter boots at the time, and they were ones where the front studs swiveled around, and there was quite a bit of controversy about those causing injuries and things. But yeah, I started playing when I was in junior school, and I played local league football. At the highest I've ever played, I suppose, is county level. But the first sort of memory of a football match that I can remember was the Leeds against Chelsea Cup final, where it went to a replay. I think the first match finished 2-2. And that's my first memory of sort of football banter, really, because half the playground was supporting Leeds and half was supporting Chelsea. And yeah, it's quite a bit of rivalry and things like that. And the first match I ever went to was at Cardiff Ninian Park and saw John Toshak score a few goals. And I think that frightened the living daylights out of me, actually going to a live match when I was about 10 years old. But yeah, those are my sort of first sporting memories, really.
Well, it's quite a special ground, Ninian Park, wasn't it? Obviously with Cardiff and that. So I suppose it's quite an induction to watching a live football match, really.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Cardiff, and yeah, it was obviously it's a big rugby city, but they love their football down there. And Ninian Park was quite an intimidating place to go to, whether you're a Cardiff fan or an away fan. I just remember my brother-in-law who drove, parked the car, and the little kid came out. He must have been about 6 years old, and he said, "Tenner to look after your car, mate." And I thought, oh, right, okay. Yeah, so quite an intimidating place to go to. But I've been a Plymouth fan for a long, long time as well. I was born in Devon. I went to college in Plymouth. My eldest son, Ross, was a mascot twice for Plymouth as well. So I've been a Plymouth Argyle fan really ever since I went down there to go to college. And they're a lovely club, Plymouth, brilliant club down there, lovely little setup. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think not that you would say they're everyone's second team, but Plymouth cover quite a big area, don't they? I think that you don't know many fans, maybe outside of Portsmouth possibly, who would have a bad word to say against them in Exeter, I suppose. But that kind of thing, I think everyone's always got a good word to say about Plymouth, haven't they?
Yeah, and you know what? Such a friendly club. I mean, we went down there once. We took the boys down there to buy them Plymouth Argyle shirts, as cruel parents would do. We bought them. Their away kit was luminous orange, and we bought them luminous orange away kits so that we would know where they were wearing these things. But then someone said to us, "Do you want to come and have a look around the ground?" And they just took us in. They showed us where Pele had sat in the changing rooms there, and they just showed us around the stadium. They're just really friendly and really welcoming, and it's just a lovely club, really.
No, I appreciate you being so sort of so open about that. Just really quickly before we talk about the main reason for you being here, I also know that you're involved with Abbeymead Rovers. So obviously, just tell us a little bit about that and your sort of relationship with them.
Yeah, Abbeymead is a housing estate in Gloucester. back in 1997 as a group of coaches who were coaching in a park, and we all got together and decided that we'd like to try and do it a little bit better than it was being done, and we formed Abbeymead Rovers. So I was a sort of founder coach, got onto the committee straight away, and then a year later became chairman, and I was chairman there for 21, nearly 22 years. And when I started as chairman, I mean, obviously it's not down to me, but there were only 6 teams when we started. And currently we have 55 teams, ranging from 5-year-olds. The lovely thing is you can start at 5 and you can carry on playing at 75, 85 now, because we've got the walking football section. So it really is a community club. It's won several sort of community awards. It's a charter mark community club with the FA, and I'm very, very proud of what we achieved in our time really at Abbeymead Rovers. It's a fantastic club. It's a huge club, one of the biggest in the Southwest. I think it's one of the top 20 in the UK in terms of size, with 55 teams. But it's brilliant. It's got the right ethos. It's about inclusion. It's about helping young people and old people now to play football in a safe, friendly and fun environment. And very proud of what we've achieved there.
And so you should be. I think, quite often nowadays with the Premier League and things like that, the grassroots side of the game can be lost a little bit. So I think it's fantastic, like you say, when you've got the work that you're doing down there with them. Eagle-eyed viewers will see that you've got your WFA shirt on. So what I want to do, before we talk about your role in the organisation and, the plaudits that go with that, for someone who's never played the sport before, obviously you've played football, but not walking football, it'd be great if you could just give us sort of a bit of an overview, really, of what the WAF is, what it stands for, its ethos and all of that, really.
A brief potted history of walking football, I suppose, then. As far as we can work out, there was a game in World War One, and there was another game in Derby in the 1930s. But those were 11-a-side games of walking football. No one really knows what rules they played to. But yes, they were walking, but they were like 11-a-side games, as I said. A guy called John Crute, who's a director at Chesterfield and works with the community section at Chesterfield, nearly 10 years ago now, decided that they wanted a game that the older members could play. And he invented the current format of walking football, which is 6-a-side, below head height, no running, no contact, etc. And the WFA then were formed roughly now about 6 years ago to drive walking football forward, really. I mean, as we all know, the FA are the governing body for association football, and the FA are involved in walking football through their county FA networks. In terms of walking football, there was no one really looking after it specifically. So the WFA set themselves up as the governing body for walking football. That's all we're interested in is to try and make walking football fun and safe for everyone, and to grow the game and to develop the game, really.
No, I think it's fantastic. And it moves on to sort of the next part of what I ask you really is the sort of benefits of playing the sport. And I know that you work at the, more at the elite level, but, even for people locally who maybe, this would be their first taste of the sport, what's the sort of benefits? What's the positives to playing walking football?
Well, the main strapline, if you like, of the walking football is fun, fitness and friendship. There are massive physical and mental health and well-being benefits of playing the game. I think if you talk to many people who play and someone was a little bit nervous about going down or a bit resilient to going down because they think it's for older men, just go and give it a go, because it's great fun. If anyone's ever played team sports in the past and they've had to give up because they couldn't quite cope anymore, they got too old, it's exactly the same, but it's different, if that makes any sense. I'm playing football, walking football now, with a guy that I played football with for 10 years. We were strike partners together in our local team. We used to go on football tours as a younger team and, go clubbing and things like that. We now go on walking football tours, and we have to lend each other glasses so that we can see the menu. And we have to plan when we're going to have a lie down in the afternoon, have a little kip. And it's exactly the same fun and exactly the same banter, but you're just a bit older. And it's brilliant. That's why most people get involved in the game, for the fun and the banter, and you have a cup of coffee or a beer afterwards. And it's great, great fun. And you can still play the game that you've loved all your life, but in a slightly different, with a different set of rules in different circumstances and in a much safer way. It's absolutely brilliant.
Well, just from a personal experience, my dad has, for whatever reason, had 2 knee operations, like 2 knee replacements. So he would have played football, but I think he found that transition initially of not being able to play football again once he had his knee operations quite difficult. But then obviously the emergence of walking football, like you say, it gives you that whole new lease of life then, doesn't it? And it's a real positive part of his life now. I mean, he lives in Wales, so it's probably a different sort of FA, but you know, it's that sort of principle though. It's still the same sort of principle of just being able to get out and socialise that maybe he wouldn't have had the organisation that you work for not existed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was still playing football at 47 years old. I mean, I'd always been a striker, but as you get older, I was gradually working my way down the teams and further back the pitch. But I played football one Saturday, and then on the following Monday, I had my hip replaced. I had osteoarthritis. So I had a hip replacement at 47 years old. And I thought at that point, football for me was over. When my youngest son became 16, instead of coaching the youth side, we set up a men's third team in the lowest of the local divisions. And I thought I would be able to play, you know, in the first season, I came on for 10, 15 minutes here and there. And I just thought it would be my way of carrying on playing. But I just couldn't do it. You know, with the hip operation, I was very nervous about contact. And then I saw the Barclays advert, as did many people. And I scorned it, as did many people. But then I saw an advert in the paper, a group of guys who got together were playing this walking football. I gave them a call and I went along. And within a month, I was playing in a national final. And I couldn't quite work out, you know, why it wasn't being made a big thing of. You know, here was this team from the Gloucestershire playing in a national final. It's the highest level I'd ever played at, and it wasn't being made a big fuss of. And that's because at the time it wasn't official and it wasn't recognised by the FA in those days. And it just shows how far really the sport has come, that the FA now recognise it. You have the WFA as a governing body specifically for the sport. And yeah, you know, it's come a long way. I was hooked instantly. You know, I put my heart and soul into walking football. I took semi-retirement from teaching in 2014, and I've thrown myself into walking football. It's given me a new lease of life. I mentioned earlier about the mental benefits. Back in 2014, I was made redundant, having spent 32 years at my school. And it knocked me for six, to be honest. I was in quite a low place. And it was about that time I discovered walking football. And it gave me something to throw myself into and to keep myself, you know, fit and healthy physically and mentally. So I would say that walking football has given me a complete and utter new lease of life. And it's absolutely brilliant. And if you're thinking about it, give it a try, because you can't knock it until you've tried it, really.
To be honest, I think that's a brilliant way to move on to the next part, really, Stuart, which is, you know, you mentioned your journey, and I'm sure there'll be other people who maybe find themselves in that similar position. If people wanted to engage then and get involved, where would be the best place to look? And also, just one other sort of parts of that question: is it limited to just certain ages? Is it to do with certain genders? You know, that kind of thing. So, if people want to get involved, how and where can they do that?
Okay, if you want to get involved, you can either go to the WFA website and there's a Find a Club section, or you can go onto your local FA, anti-FA website, and they'll list all the walking football clubs and the contacts. So those are the two best places to start. Is it gender specific or age specific? It's generally played by people over 50, but not specifically. There's a growing demand for people who are recovering from injuries or ill health as part of recuperation. For example, we've got a guy who comes to one of our sessions who had a stroke just over 2 years ago, and he really did struggle with movement at the start. He's coming along every week now. His movement is getting much, much better, and he's improving massively. And he was actually part of the We Are Undefeatable setup, which we can talk about later. But, you know, Abbeymead Rovers run a disability walking football section for people in care homes, and we're looking now to open that up to a rehabilitation session as well. So we get a couple of guys. We've got one guy in his 30s who's got a heart condition, and he's not allowed to play running 11-a-side football. So he comes to our walking football sessions, because the fact that it's walking and no contact is a great leveler. The women's game is growing at a rate of knots, actually. We have one, sometimes two at Abbeymead, mainly one. But there are walking football clubs now specifically for women. There's the WFA are running a national cup for women's teams. And the WFA now have set up 40s, 50s, and most recently a 60's women's walking football teams. So it is growing massively. I've done some female-only coaching sessions recently. I'm doing another one in a couple of weeks' time. And yeah, that side of the game is growing massively.
Well, it's Great that you mentioned about the fact it's accessible to everyone, because I think even my own personal experience, I'm due for a knee op soon, and I don't know if I can play anymore after that, to be honest. So that might be my next step anyway. I'm in my early 30s, but it's great that it's not just limited to specific ages and things like that, which it could easily be if we're not careful. So I think that's brilliant for that.
There are some clubs who limit numbers, because the thing about walking football is it's a growing sport. So it very much depends on the facility. I mean, some people, where I play, we've got an outside AstroTurf where we can have 2 6-a-side pitches. So we can cope with 24 people. There are other facilities where they can only cope with 12 people. So they have to limit it at 12. You'll find that most operate a pay and play system. So people don't have to book in, they just can turn up and play. Obviously, during COVID, things changed as well, because at one point you were limited to bubbles of 6. So you did have to have people booking into a bubble. Now we have to take the register and all the hand sanitizing and the track and trace things. But it does very much depend on the club. But you'll find that most clubs are inclusive, and they will welcome people along for a variety of age groups, both genders, and make it accessible to all.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like you say, I think the biggest thing for me to take out of it is it isn't a great leveler, no matter what sort of background you come from in terms of playing football. So I think that's brilliant. But just on that, you mentioned obviously it's a growing sport and the structure. Before we move on to sort of you, and we're going to move on to the We Are Undefeatable bit in a minute, but you spoke about coaching, and is there like a pathway for even coaching as well? So if people not just want to play the sport, they want to maybe, like you did, start their own club or start their own sort of 6-a-side on that kind of thing. How would you engage with the coaching side of it? And is there a pathway for it?
Well, the WFA put together quite a comprehensive toolkit, first of all, which is aimed at helping new clubs to start up. And if you affiliate to the WFA, then you will be given the toolkit. We're also in the process as well of writing a toolkit for players as well, so to give players advice. In terms of coaching, again, because it's a new sport, what you tend to find, most clubs and most sessions will only book a facility for an hour. So what happens is people will turn up, pay the money, do a bit of a warm-up, and they just want to play for an hour. So for the first few years of walking football, there's been very little coaching that goes on. We certainly found that when we formed the England teams, there was no walking football specific coaching. So what we've done is we've developed our own course. My son, who's a UEFA B qualified coach, and myself, we wrote a coaching course. We wanted it to be a very basic coaching course. It's certified only by the WFA. So it's nothing to do with the FA, because the FA's grassroots way in is a level 1, which tends to be focused more on youth football. Mm-hmm. Our grassroots coaching qualification is fairly basic in terms of providing people with examples of warm-up activities, examples of training drills that are specific to walking football, and the skills and the tactics for walking football. So we run them through that in a morning session, say 3 hours. And then in the afternoon, the people who take part in it, we'll give them a topic of some sort, and they will then develop a coaching routine that shows progression and take it through into a match situation, and we will observe them and give them feedback. So it's not rocket science. It's not a 3-day course. It's a fairly basic course, but it's aimed at providing people who want to get involved with grassroots walking football a bit of an understanding of how the game is played. And we've actually been very fortunate to be asked to go to various other countries, such as Guernsey and Rwanda and Malaysia and Singapore. And we've run these courses in those countries as well. And they've been very, very well received, because otherwise there is nothing out there that was specific for walking football.
No, I was going to move on to like the whole Rwanda and those sort of places later on, but we might as well sort of touch on that now. In terms of that, in your opinion, do you think that this can really sort of grow globally? I know you mentioned obviously about going to these sorts of places, but is there an appetite abroad as well for it, if that makes sense?
Oh yeah, I mean it's growing all over the world. I mean there's 60,000 plus people playing the sport in the UK. It's played in virtually every country that we come across now. It's played in some form or other. And yeah, we've been very, very fortunate to be invited to these countries to actually put on some referee training, coaching courses, and coaching courses as well. So, we've been very lucky to be asked to go, but these people in these countries have got a real appetite for the game, because it ticks so many boxes in the health and well-being. And the WFA are going to run the First Nations World Cup next year, or World Nations Cup next year. It was due to be this year, but obviously COVID set pay to that. And that's going to be at the Etihad complex in Manchester. And we've now got 32 teams That's not 32 countries, because some countries will put in a 50s and a 60s together. But in total, we've got 16 teams in the 50s and 16 teams in the 60s for the first ever World Nations Cup, WFA World Nations Cup in Manchester. So, and that's growing all the time. We're getting new countries approach us all the time who want to become affiliated and get involved in the sport. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I was going to move on to sort of your role within that as the England manager in a bit, but there was something you touched on earlier, which was, I couldn't do it justice by talking about it really, is the We Are Undefeatable campaign. So it'd be great if you could just talk to us about that. I know at the time of recording, you only a couple of days ago were being interviewed for that. And so it'd just be great if you could talk to us about that and what they do and what they stand for, really.
Yeah, well, in April, I was absolutely gobsmacked when I received an email asking me if I would like to be involved in setting up a virtual walking football team. Now, virtual walking football, how on earth do you do that? And I saw the We Are Undefeatable's name on it, and I knew about the campaign in terms of trying to get people living with long-term health conditions, getting them up and mobile. And to be honest, I was incredibly honoured to be asked, and I spoke to them, and we talked it through. And the person whose idea it was, her dad plays walking football, and through COVID, they were obviously struggling and getting bored, and had this idea of trying to put together training drills and things that you could do in the comfort of your own home. And it was mainly aimed at people who weren't yet confident post-lockdown to go out. Some people were still shielding. These people were living with these long-term health conditions. And they asked me to put together a series of programs over a 10 to 12 week period of time with the aim of building a team of people, giving them a sense of belonging, and then helping them to improve their fitness and desire to get off the couch and get out there and do something that was physically challenging for them, and to help them to get fit. And yeah, the virtual side of it was a real challenge, I have to say. But what we did is we actually took 12 people. We split them into two groups of 6. My idea being that we would have a bit of competition. So we had the virtual whites and the virtual reds. We called them we told them they were going to be the virtual England team.
Right.
So we got them all virtual England shirts, red shirts and white shirts. And then we had competitions each week. I would get myself filmed, my sons and my wife would film me in the back garden doing some training drills. So the first week was warm-ups. The second week was passing. Third week, we did Pilates actually on the third week. Had a specialist come in and did a Pilates exercise with them. Then we did shooting, then we did penalties, then we did control and turning. And then we kind of went back full circle and developed them a bit further. So I filmed all of these activities and drills. I sent them all to them on WhatsApp. And then every week on a Thursday, we would meet for an hour and we'd have an individual catch up. They'd all tell me how they'd got on during the week and how they'd got on with the drills. I was setting quizzes every week. So I was keeping a tally of all the scores of the quizzes. So we had a Reds v White quiz going on, which was brilliant. And the other thing which we did, which we stumbled upon really, was we stumbled upon a Keepy Uppy challenge. A young girl called Imogen, her parents were both key workers, and she was totally inspired by Captain Tom. So she set up the 7.1 key workers Keepy Uppy challenge, because she worked out that there were 7.1 million key workers in the UK. So she set up this Just Giving page and a target of doing 7.1 million keep-ups. And we latched onto this. And, in the first week, between the 12 people, they did 350 keep-ups.
Wow.
By the end of week 10, they had done 117,000 keep-ups.
That's incredible.
It was absolutely remarkable. One woman, Heather, she did over 20,000 keep-ups herself in the 10-week period. And what we found was that this challenge, it gave them a focus. It helped them to improve their balance, their determination. They could do it in their back room or they could do it outside. They could do one at a time. So I met a group of them, and one woman Marie was doing one at a time. And I just helped her and challenged her. And by the end of that half an hour, she was doing 4 at a time. And for her, that was a remarkable achievement. Mm-hmm. And James, who had the stroke recoverer, he was doing 10 a week to start with. And by the end of it, he was doing 350 a week. It was absolutely stunning, giving people a challenge that they could deal with individually and set themselves a challenge and have personal goals that was contributing to a team goal. And it was just brilliant. Some of them, we had one guy who had tore both of his Achilles, so he couldn't stand up. So we said to him, get a balloon and do keepy uppies with your head.
Yeah.
Or one lady had a spinal injury, and we said, get a sponge ball and do keepy uppies with a sponge ball. And some of them had to lean against a wall or on the chair. It didn't matter. They were doing keepy uppies and they were contributing. Yeah, 117,000 as a group we all did in 10 weeks. And it was just remarkable.
I've got to be honest, that is incredible, to be honest, and like you say, remarkable. And I think you're probably doing yourself a disservice of I've got a lot of admiration for you to be involved in, and obviously the whole organisation, but to do what you've been doing, especially during difficult times. So I think not just you, but also the We Are Undefeatable campaign. It's an incredible selfless act of doing all of that. So I'm sure everyone who took part is grateful.
It was a fantastic campaign. The people involved were truly inspirational. One of the guys is living with Parkinson's, and he had an operation halfway through. He had to go into self-isolation. And we've discovered that he's passed all sorts of FA badges on recovering injuries and physiotherapy and masseurs. And we've just appointed him as my over 60s physio now. So, that's brilliant. That's a real outcome from it. They have been the most fantastic, inspirational group of people to work with. It has been incredibly humbling. It's been great fun. We've had so many laughs along the way. And we were supposed to all meet up and have a six-a-side game at the end of it. But obviously the recent situation has put pay to that. But we had a special online event to finish it off. So because we couldn't play the match, we had this fantastic surprise for them. So we had Emile Heskey and Kelly Smith. Emile joined the red team and Kelly joined the white team. And none of the players knew. And they came on board for this end event. And we did a live keepy uppy challenge, a live penalty shootout, and a live quiz. And it was just a brilliant way to finish the whole thing. And the We Are Undefeatable group have now put together some fantastic videos that by the time this goes out will be live on Twitter and on YouTube. And it's been the most amazing thing to get involved in. As I say, it's been really humbling. And what's great about it, for me, the best achievement is that these group of people have come together having not known each other, and they've become a real team. Two teams, yes, but one team. One team supporting each other. They trusted each other and me enough to put on there, if someone was feeling a bit down one day, they would put it onto the group and everyone would join together and support them. And it was just the fact that the team has become so strong and have made great friendships. And regardless of the fact that the campaign has finished, this will carry on.
Yeah.
We plan on meeting up online every couple of weeks, and we plan on doing the match in the new year when it's safe to do so. And it's just been the most rewarding learning experience for me and the most humbling experience. It's just been brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
I was about to say, obviously, by the time this goes out, like you say, the campaign, all of the videos and stuff. So what I'll do is I'll put the links and all of that within our sort of like the show notes at the bottom. So if anyone wants to engage with that. But like you say, I think it is that legacy, isn't it, of what happens after that. And I think this, it's an incredible experience to be part of, and it will continue. So yeah, I mean, hats off to everyone who was involved with that. And as I say, if people do want to engage with that or support it, I'll put all of that below. But yeah, sorry, Stuart, you were going to say.
Well, in terms of the legacy, there is going to be a plan. The plan that we ran is going to be put together into a document giving what we did each week. There's already things on Instagram now with me demonstrating some of the actions in slow motion, which is a bit bizarre. And on Monday night, I did a live Instagram, which was totally bizarre. Spending half an hour just talking to a phone with no one there was very bizarre. So it's been a learning experience for me too. Yeah, so there's lots of ways for people to engage in that. And you're right, the idea is that there will be a legacy and that there will be other people who can benefit from the work that we've done, because we've all learned a lot. But these things that we've done, it's not rocket science. Other people can do these, and you can do them from inside your house or in your back garden. You don't have to go out and be part of a big group to do it. So yeah,
I think it is absolutely fantastic. What I wanted to do, Stuart, and I you've mentioned about the community side and how selfless you've been with all of that, but you're actually the first international manager we've ever had on this podcast. So obviously, first of all, thank you for doing that. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, because obviously a massive part of what you seem to be doing is promoting walking football engagement with all of those things like you were just saying. But obviously, as well as that, your role is also as a national team manager, I believe, of the over 60s. And also, are you currently like to do with the women's over 40 team as well?
Yeah. We've just appointed a new over 40s women's manager, and I'm going to assist. I'm going to be in the background now, so I'll step back from that one a little bit. But do you know what? Honestly, Charlie, I have to pinch myself. I'm just a guy who's volunteered in football since the age of 12. I love it. I've done an awful lot at local level. I've played at county level, and when I saw the advert, I probably had too much red wine the night that I saw the advert, and just thought, when am I ever going to be able to get the chance to apply for a role like this again? And so I did. And the beauty of what we're doing as well is it's not full of ex-professional players. That what we're doing is giving people who've never had that opportunity the opportunity. When we ran the trials, we ran 4 trials around the country at 50s and at 60s, and then we've done the same for the women's and 70s. But 3 years ago, when we started this process, we had people coming to trials who would just say, they were just proud to say that they'd been to an England trial. We had one guy who turned up for the over 60s who was mid 70s, and he was interviewed by the local TV, and they said to him, "Did you ever think that you'd get an England trial at the age of 73?" And it gave people what it's doing. This is it's giving people opportunities that they never in their wildest dreams thought that they would get these opportunities, and that's what it's doing for me as well. I still have to pinch myself when you say the role, because I was chairman of a local community club up until a year or so ago, and it's just brilliant, the opportunities that it's given for me, and I'm grabbing this with both hands and running with it and making the most of it, because I'm loving what I'm doing, because I see so many benefits for walking football as a sport. It's given me, I said earlier, it's given me a new lease of life. And when we picked our squads, we said to them very clearly that you will be role models, because the whole reason for picking an England squad 3 years ago was to raise the profile of the sport. And it's not always, the players will tell you different perhaps, but it's not always about winning. It's about sometimes going to these places and raising the profile. When we went to Gibraltar, we took an over 60s team to Gibraltar, and it was featured very heavily on Gibraltar TV. And they noticed a massive increase in membership once we'd been out there and worked with them. I mean, one of the biggest problems that we've got is a lack of credible opposition. There are very few countries out there who have national teams. So, that's why what we're trying to do is to try and help. And when we've been to Rwanda and Guernsey and Malaysia, we're helping them, telling them how we ran the trials and what we look for in players and things like that. So, we're trying to help to grow the game in this country, but also to grow the game globally. And yeah, it's a massive honour, and I have to pinch myself every day. It's just brilliant.
Just on that, Stuart, if you don't mind me asking a slightly personal question, I know you're obviously incredibly passionate about your role and your place in the walking football sort of structure, but do you feel any pressure? And not just because obviously being an England manager, but like you say, because of England being the pioneers of this and at the forefront of everything that's good about walking football, do you ever feel sort of a bit of pressure about that, or not really? Because, you're the first person who's ever had this sort of role.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're only as good as your team performs on the pitch, and the players are all self-funding. So we provide them with a kit, but often when we go to these places, when we went to Gibraltar, they had to pay for their airfare and the hotel. When we went to Italy, the Italians provided the hotel, but we still had to pay for the airfare. So the players are putting a lot of their efforts and their money into this, as am I, because I'm self-funded as well for most of these things. And yeah, I've got to get a balance between loyalty and picking a team that can win, because I want to be loyal to the players who've been with us, but also, as I've said to them from day one, every day there's someone else who plays walking football who's turning 60, who will be after your place. So, I'd like to think that we're trying to strike the balance between keeping players on board and keeping them loyal, giving them opportunities, but also bringing new players in who are clearly very, very good, and they deserve the chance as well. But yeah, clearly, if we go to places and don't win, then there is pressure. I've been very fortunate in that we've won all of our games bar one. Not that I'm bitter about the experience in Italy, but they parked several buses in front of some very, very small goals, We had about 40 shots hit the woodwork on several occasions. They had one shot that deflected and span over the line. Not that I'm bitter, but hey, that's football, isn't it? These things happen. On another day, we'd have beaten them 10-0. And in fact, we did get our revenge because we beat them in the European Championships. We beat them in the final and became the first country to win the European Walking Football Trophy. So we're European champions as well. So, yeah, there is pressure, but we're achieving new things all the time. We're breaking ground all the time. And it's lovely to be part of that journey. And I'm just loving every minute of it. I actually did get... I got a very brief run out for the 50s. When we went to Greece, we played the soccer 60's. They play six-a-side running football for younger people. They had a World Cup in Crete. We played a demonstration match against Greece at over 50 and over 60 in between the semi-finals and the finals. And we had 3,000 people under floodlights watching the 50s and 60s play Greece. And our 50s only took a very small squad. And because I was a 50, I sneaked into the squad and was substitute and got a little run out at the end. So I can actually say that I have played. I played in a 0-0 draw, but I turned 60 in March, so my team had better watch out.
You could be a player manager now, couldn't you?
I could be, but I need to prove myself first. I'm not just going to put myself in there for the sake of it. But everyone involved in this is a volunteer. It's all voluntary, and I think maybe I deserve another minute at some point for the over 60s if it happens, and if the time is right, then maybe. But we do also have regional teams, and I am playing in my Southwest regional teams, and that's where players get picked up. And up until now, I've only played against over 50s, and being 59, it's tough playing against 50-year-olds. So when I turn 60, it'll be interesting to see how I do compete against other 60-year-olds and whether I have got a chance or not. We shall see.
I've got to say, Stuart, you're incredibly humble for a man in your position who's won what you have, both as playing in terms of walking football, but also as a manager. So I think it's amazing to hear your sort of side of this. Really, what I wanted to sort of look at really quickly was one of the other people who do the podcast with me. He's like a grassroots football manager, and we were just talking really about. What do you look for? I know you mentioned about them being role models and obviously the personal side of their as a player, but actually on a technical perspective, what do you look for in, say, a walking footballer that we're all obviously used to the 11-a-side game. What is it you're looking for, particular skill set in a walking footballer, really?
Yeah, well, it's a very technical game, which is why I think we haven't been inundated. That perhaps that age group, if you go back when they were playing their league football, it's perhaps a little bit more blood and thunder. And walking football is a very technical game. So you have to have someone who's got a good first touch. You have to have someone who is able to see a pass. Quite often in walking football, you'll find a lot of clubs play 3-touch just in their training sessions, because the quicker you can move the ball, the better walking football and the better the team is going to be if you can move the ball quicker. So yeah, that's what we're looking for, really. Technically good players, good communication, obviously, is really important. A good team player, because you've only got 6 on the pitch at any time. You have to be a good team player. People have to get on, and rather than having a go at each other. It's also important to have a really good discipline, because the way walking football works is that if you have 3 offences, so if you run, that's 1 offence. If you then have a free kick given against you for physical contact, that's a 2nd offence. Then you're on a warning. If you get a 3rd offence, you get a blue card and you go in the sin bin.
Wow.
Now, as a manager, I want 6 players on the pitch. So I'm not going to pick someone who constantly runs. I'm not going to pick someone with a Sunday morning park attitude who wants to, have it up them and kick him up in the air type attitude. So I'm going to pick players who've show good discipline, who are good technical footballers, who aren't going to get themselves blue carded all the time, because I don't want to be down to 6 players. I don't want to spend my whole time juggling players on the substitutes and keeping account of who's on 2 and who's not on 2. So yeah, that's another thing that we're looking, and that's a big difference between our game and other games is the blue card and the sin bin, and players have to be disciplined. So that's another thing that you're looking for. But obviously, you've also got the other things that, you know, we're blessed with goalkeepers. Some of the goalkeepers, just like in normal football, I think you have to be a bit crazy to be a goalkeeper. And these guys in their 60s, the way they throw themselves around, we're blessed with some brilliant goalkeepers. And then you get players who are naturally good defenders. We've got a guy, Graham Curry, who sits at the back for us, and he's been described as being Beckenbauer-like by about 2 or 3 different teams because of the way that he distributes the ball. You know, he can see a pass. We've got Spencer, who's our centre midfield dynamo, who never stops. He's just a workaholic. If the game isn't going his way, he'll tell you a joke because he's a stand-up comedian in his spare time. You know, we've got a team of great characters, really, really great characters, and they gel together as a team. But they're all getting on a bit. You know, we started this, and they're now 2 to 3 years older than when they first came in. So we've got new players coming in, and you know, it's a fascinating process. But that's what we're looking for. We have training days. We try to invite 2 or 3 trialists in on every training day. They come to us through the regional scene that we've got. So we've got regional managers picking their strongest teams. We see them playing against each other and playing against the England players, and then we bring them in for trials. So it's open, it's transparent, and yeah, we're looking to give players new opportunities all the time, whilst at the same time trying to show a bit of loyalty to the guys who've been with us for a while as well. It's a balancing act.
I was going to say, international football's not easy, is it? You know, it's. I just wanted to move on really to the last sort of few questions now, Stuart, about the future really. And first of all, I wanted to talk about the future. We'll move on to sort of your future, but future of the sport in sort of maybe 5 to 10 years' time. Where would you hope to see? You know, obviously you've started this legacy of walking football. Where would you hope to see that in the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
There's still a bit of confusion in the game caused by various different groups in the game. The FA rules are slightly different to the WFA rules. It's in a lot better place now than when I first started. When I first started playing, you would go to a tournament, and that tournament organizer would make the rules up as they went along. Right. There were very few good referees. The WFA have got a very good referees course, which we're now training referees, and that's vital to the game, having good quality referees, because if players can run, they will. They need to be slowed down. You know, we need to think about the safety of people. So it's in a better place now than it was. There is still a lot of confusion being caused. The WFA have got a bid in to recognise it as a unique sport. Now that would be massive development if we could get that, because there are so many differences between walking football and association football. There are over 50 differences. Right. And you know, it's not by any means a criticism of the FA, but when the guidelines for return to play came out from the FA, there were 15 pages of return to play guidelines, and walking football got one mention in a question and answer on the final page. Right. And you know, if you've got 60,000 people playing it, that's what the WFA is trying to do, is to try to, you know, look at what's happening within football, but just concentrate purely on walking football, and to try and make things better for people who want to play walking football, whether it be at grassroots level or international level or whatever. So that would be one thing that I would hope for, and a lot of people would hope for, is that the game can become more consistent in terms of venues, in terms of facilities, in terms of rules and regulations, the laws of the game. We need more consistency. To help that, we need more referees. And, you know, if the sport could be unique, then there's no reason why in a few years' time it couldn't be an Olympic sport. That's the dream, but you've got a dream, haven't you, sometimes? So why not have a dream like that?
You've definitely got our support. I think it's, you know, throughout this whole episode, we've been talking about the benefits and how, you know, great the sport is for people. So, you know, it's been brilliant to talk to you about this unique opportunity you've been given. And I think you've probably undersold how much of an input and how much of a driving force you've maybe been in developing this sport into what it is today. But I just wanted to ask you really about your personal sort of journey. Obviously, you're an international manager now. Do you still envisage being one in maybe 5 to 10 years? Or, you know, how do you see your role in all of this playing out?
I've no idea. I mean, I would love to. I would love to play for my national team as well as manage. It's got to be a dream that I have, and you know, maybe at some point I'll get that opportunity. I don't know. I'm certainly not just going to pick myself for the sake of picking myself. If it'll have to be other people who tell me that I'm good enough. So I'd love to achieve that. I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing for as long as I can. And, if we have a World Cup and things go horribly wrong and I'm not selecting a very good team, then there'll be people that maybe think that maybe I shouldn't be manager. And if that's the case, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I'd like to think that I've put an awful lot into walking football in a voluntary capacity, and I would like to stay involved in some form or other. Whatever I've done in my life, I started volunteering when I was 12 years old, and as a teacher, I ran school teams as a volunteer. When I joined football clubs, I put myself on the committee. I'm not someone who will stand back and moan and complain when things aren't right. I always put myself out there, so I don't just go along and just play. I'll put my money where my mouth is. I'll join in. I'll go on the committee. I'll get involved in things. It's the way I've always been, and I'd like to think that's the way that I'll always carry on. I love promoting this sport. I love doing things like this and media interviews when I can talk about the benefits of the sport, because it does get some bad press out there. There are some people who've just turned 50 who scorn the sport. They still think of that Barclays advert, but don't knock it till you try it. It's great fun, and it's giving thousands and thousands of people the opportunity to stay fit, to stay healthy, physically and mentally, and to have a great laugh. And the banter, I'm going out to play football at 8:15 tonight, and the fun that I'm going to have out there with the guys is great, and we just take the mickey out of each other. And there's still no feeling like putting the ball in the back of the net as a striker. There's still no feeling like it.
I think, Stuart, you're a great advert for the sport, and I think you undersell what you do. So I think it's for us. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I hope you keep moving forward with that. What we always do, Stuart, to finish off with before we sort of sum everything up, was you do a couple of quick fire questions, if you don't mind doing them. So
yeah.
This could be as a player, ones that you've played in, or as a fan, or as and now an England manager. But just really, the first one we go to is your favourite venue or ground that you've ever been to.
Wembley Stadium. I went to the old Wembley. I probably watched more pop concerts there than football games, but the old Wembley Stadium was brilliant. I've been to the new Wembley Stadium. The best ground I've been to with walking football has been the Amex Stadium in Brighton, where we played the first ever international walking football game against Italy at the Amex Stadium, and that was huge. That was brilliant.
That's incredible. The best player you've ever sort of seen. Now, in your case, it could be someone you've coached, but so we could do it maybe from an 11-a-side perspective, but also walking football. But I don't want it to be divisive, Stuart. If you're going to upset someone in your team, I don't want you to feel like you have to answer it.
No, okay. So I won't talk about walking football then. I'll just talk about. I think. George Best was an absolute genius. I never saw him live. A player I would love to have seen live was Matt Le Tissier. There are some players who are great goal scorers, but he's a scorer of great goals. Probably the best player I saw live was Gaza. I'm not sure he remembers much about the game, but I remember when he was playing at Derby, and he was a genius. Even at that level, whatever state he was in, he was an absolute genius.
I've got to say, I agree with you on that, and obviously different maybe generations, if you don't want me being polite, but he's still the best player I've ever seen, and that was when I was growing up. Just like you say, an absolute genius. It was such a shame, maybe the way it played out. But Stuart, I think that's the perfect way to end this interview. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I think you've been very magnanimous in talking about what you've done for walking football, and just I think you're a fantastic advert, and it's so humbling to hear someone who's achieved so much to be so open and honest about that, and we can't thank you enough for that. Just to finish off with, obviously we mentioned about where people can engage with walking football, but if people want to keep up to date with what you're doing in terms of like social media and stuff like that, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, before I say that, can I just also say thank you to you? Walking football is a growing sport, and we do need to keep the profile of it high. We're still short of sponsors, and that's not the reason for coming on here, but if we can raise the profile of the sport, then we can get more people playing the game, we can get more people benefiting from the game, and hopefully we can also bring more money into the game, which will help us to grow it even further. So a big thank you to you for hosting this and for helping me to raise the profile. So you can look up the WFA. Also, the WFA have a website. It's a fantastic website. So you can go onto that, just look up the WFA on Google, and I think it comes out as the top one. If clubs want to affiliate, you can do, or you can subscribe to the newsletter. And there's a newsletter that comes out every couple of weeks, which gives you up-to-date things on what's happening in the walking football world. and it just keeps everyone up to date. But if you want to keep up to date with what's going on, say the WFA website and newsletter will give you a really good update on what's happening in the world of walking football.
Stuart, I can't thank you enough for giving up your time. That was a fantastic, interview. So I really appreciate you doing that. And as I say, hopefully off the back of this, you can get lots of support and to help to grow the sport. So thank you again, Stuart, for that.
Yeah, thank you. No problem at all. And I say thank you for helping to raise the profile.